next session, SIAM implementation in the government sector. HM Land Registry are long-standing members with ITSMF and always have a really interesting story to tell. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Gary Williams. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me and
All
see my
good?
screen okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all good.
Um, Mark, because I'm presenting, if you could prompt me if anything comes up in the chat, that would be helpful. Thank
I
you.
will do, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so SIAM in a major government data transformation program. So yeah, Land Registry, as Mark said, um, decided to integrate our service management decided to integrate our service management sort of 10 years ago and use our in-house service management capability to do that, to manage all of the contracts that we've got to deliver our operational services. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we utilized that capability and applied it to one of the major government programs that Land Registry was charged with delivering, which is the local land charges program. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. The strategic thinking, the way we designed it, and some of the things that we've changed and learnt as a result of that sort of operational delivery phase. So the context of it, the local land charges program is a major government program. Yeah, absolutely major government program. The purpose of it is to extract, transform, and migrate local authority data for local land charges records in England and Wales into one central repository and standardize the data to ensure that it contains spatial data and to make sure that the overall service that's delivered around that is delivered instantly and has a consistent price. This is all part of the improving the house buying experience and making land information more transparent across England and Wales. In terms of the context of what we're doing, we work with 9 suppliers across 2 different work streams and have our own in-house capability as well and we're utilizing that to sort of complete this register in the shortest time that we can. And I'll come on to some of that in a bit more detail. So we're going to talk to you about where we saw the value, what the outcomes we wanted to enable were, and the risks that we'd identified and how we sought to mitigate that. So hopefully you can take some of this and maybe apply it to your own particular organizational context. And we can talk about specific lessons that were learned from the phases of the contracts. Main focus will be on maintaining the supply chain relationships and performance, Land Registry's ability to provide a pipeline of work to those suppliers, managing and delivering that workflow and dealing with the dependencies, the associated dependencies. And again, I'll talk a bit more about that. And also then when things didn't quite work as intended. So the context, the local land charges program has been around for a long time. Over 10 years, it involved a lot of legislation and then building the actual service itself, or building the register and the supporting services. So what Land Registry has implemented is a local land charges register with a published schema to ensure consistency across all of that data in England and Wales. And where this program has so many benefits is it's actually taking the address-based information and then associating a digital spatial extent with it. And that is seen as such a massive enabler for other government change and also for services that the private sector can ultimately then deliver. So once the register is put together, the professional community can search against it, and then the local authorities and other originating authorities then maintain that register either via a user interface if that local authority doesn't have their own IT systems, or else, as in the vast majority of local authorities do, via an API integration into the land registry's API to manage this register. So these services have been built to GDS standards, and we've just recently received the sign off for live from GDS for live service, which is something we're very proud of. And the task that is now underway is to transform and migrate all of the data across all of the local authorities in England and Wales into the schema. We've been running with this for sort of 4 years now. And there's 320 odd to do. The register is now approaching the 100 local authorities that are in there, and we're pushing to complete this as soon as we possibly can over the next couple of years. From a strategic perspective, Land Registry identified that bringing suppliers on board was an approach that enabled us to look to complete the register as soon as we possibly could. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like now. As I said, Land Registry chose to reuse the experience we had from an in-house service integrator perspective, and that then gives us that sort of central point of coordination to the local authorities in England and Wales about progress and how things are coming together. There are 2 separate services that are required to deliver this program. One we call migration services delivery, so in effect data transformation services, and we went out to market for 3. We ended up getting 2, and we have our own in-house capability as well. And again, I'll talk a bit more in detail about what these services are. And then the other work stream is what we call data extract, import, and integration services. So we work with the 7, we refer to them as incumbent suppliers. So the suppliers with whom local authorities already have contracts to deliver data and system services in relation to local land charges. And we also have we also work, in some instances, local authorities do it themselves, so we work with their in-house teams. So that's what our SIAM model looked like. So why did we award contracts? Said from a migration services perspective, we had an in-house capability, but we recognized that we wanted more of that capability and capacity. So we went out the market to source that. We thought this would give us a more resilient supply chain. So the more horses you've got in the race, the more likely you are to get some finishes. And we'd also run a pilot with a supplier in and around some of these services. So we really felt like we were better informed in terms of what worked, what didn't, how we might do things differently. So we felt the market had something to offer in that space.
Also.
Sorry, is someone on mute? Okay, and then as far as the incumbents are concerned, so the suppliers who already have contracts with local authorities, the initial approach was to try and influence them to develop tool sets themselves, and only 1 of the 7 went on to do that. For the other 6, we came to the conclusion that we needed to pay them to develop the services that we wanted to enable the program to deliver. So we went to them with single tender awards because they were the only people who could do that. We felt that they would give us better control of the timeline, and also maybe better influence over the local authorities and software suppliers to look to move at our pace. And I can talk about how successful that was for us a little bit later. So from a migration service delivery perspective, the work stream covers 5 services: data discovery, scanning, digital textualization, spatial creation and amendment of any pre-existing, and then arts, so the development of business rules to make corrections to the textual components. So the initial strategy we had that we would engage specialists for those individual services, and then Land Registry would perform the integration across that delivery. We went out for early market engagement, which was really, really invaluable. We had 30 plus companies come forward and engage with that. And some of the bigger players came back to us and said, okay, this is like really, really interesting. You know, we can see how much value there is in this program. We'd like to do it end to end. So again, that involved our sort of strategic thinking, and we went out to market then off the back of that early market engagement for end-to-end delivery, but also the fact that the contracts would also cater for more modular service delivery. So if we needed spatial creation services only for a particular local authority migration, we would look to call upon that. So that's how we ended up shaping it. As you can see, hopefully from this diagram, Land Registry are really, really involved in this workflow with the quality assurance sign off. So the suppliers are accountable for the data transformation against the published standards that we give them. Land Registry are accountable for assuring the quality and for what actually gets loaded into the live register. And then as far as the data extract and import with the incumbent supply chain, Land Registry needed services to get data out of their systems, because we need to understand all of the data that a local authority have got. We then look to stitch that together to understand how complete that data set is against our standard, and to also understand where the gaps are and what we need to do to go and complete it to meet our standards, our schema. So we have an early engagement function where we work with the local authorities, and as you can imagine, it's not just about the data. There's a whole series of legal considerations. There's also local authority resource planning, because this is quite a big commitment from them. Even though we do an awful lot of the data transformation work, it's the local authorities who understand their data, and they are really heavily involved in working with us in what we propose to be quite a challenging but achievable timeline for completing the migrations. So local authorities wrap resourcing plans around that. So it's making sure those things are aligned before we move into migration delivery. The data fixes and scripts are something that has become apparent as we were going through the journey, and another service that we needed to call upon. Because local authority data has generally been fit for purpose for what they needed to do in terms of overall service delivery. When this program came along and said, right, there was going to be one single standard, and we worked with people on establishing what that standard was, and geospatial data is going to be associated with it, it really raised the bar on data quality. So we've found that we spend time working with the local authorities and the incumbent systems to fix almost like legacy data issues, and sometimes fixing them at source is the best way to look to achieve that. When we're finished doing the transformation, we then load all of the data, or we load the missing pieces in effect back into the local authority system, so that when we turn the API integration on, when the local authority goes live, those data sources mirror each other, and then that reduces the service management overhead associated with maintaining the subsequent register. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of what the services we were looking to integrate were, and this is a bit of a view of the contract and sort of legal model that we, it provides the framework with us for working. Say incumbents. So these are the people who supply the services to the local authority already. Single tender award contract, fixed price for the services. With the migration service delivery partners, some of the services were fixed price. As you can imagine, at the start, where we talk about a discovery, so going in and trying to understand how many records you have, how many charges you have, how complete those charges are, you get an initial estimate. That changes as you go through the data transformation process. So we have a volume-based service charges associated with those at the end. There's access agreements between the migration service delivery partners and the local authorities. and then there's the existing service contract. So that provides the framework within which the program looks to deliver. So when we came to design and when we came to like mitigate risks, key things were like, what are the metrics we're going to look to use, and what is the appropriate governance structure? We learned from the pilot that critical success factors and key performance indicators needed to be that. You can drown in metrics that don't actually relate to the value and the outcomes that you want to achieve. So we were really, really focused on that. They were clearly articulated in the procurement documentation. So we had critical success factors. We had two focusing on delivery performance. We had one around the behaviors we wanted. So that's this collaboration, this working together. Data security, obviously, because we're processing local authority data. So that was important, that was handled appropriately. And then on invoicing payments, because if they've done the work, they want to be paid promptly. And then when we related to the key performance indicators, we focused on quality, one on delivery, one on getting it right first time with the data sources, making sure referrals, so making sure that the data transformation partners, migration service delivery partners, weren't throwing the hard stuff over the local authorities to sort out, and that was done appropriately. And then we've also then got some around, and this is how many we expect you to complete per quarter to keep the program online with its business case. We look to implement sort of relatively simple but beneficial governance to make sure that the right relationships operationally and strategically were implemented, and that governance structure was in place from sort of day one and was up and running from day one. So yeah, be clear on what you're capturing and measuring and why. Make sure you've got that continuous improvement expectation and culture sort of built in. And yeah, we found it really, really useful to build in the process workflows into the service requirements and share that, so that the migration service delivery partners understood how we were working and why. To mitigate the pipeline of work incentive, I mean, we were working across the business with all the different stakeholders involved here to make sure that the flow of work that was coming through into the migration service delivery partners was there, because the contract was written in a way where we talked about how you would be rewarded for performance, and you would be allocated work based on your performance, but there weren't any guaranteed volumes delivered. So we knew that had implications for us in terms of maybe what some of the upfront costs were. But whilst this was still a bit of a risk, Land Registry decided that's how we would approach it. So really building that pipeline of work and all of the considerations in doing that was a risk that we looked to mitigate. We designed a work share allocation so that we came up with a method that said, because we were expecting 2 or 3 migration service delivery partners, we came up with a way where we could get them to work in a collaborative way, and whoever was going the fastest set the pace for how much work would be allocated. So we came up with a set of performance metrics that meant how well you'd performed previously determined how much work you got in the next work share allocation, which was once a quarter. And again, we were able to go out and explain that as part of the procurement. And then that means that you then move across to getting those things right. The work share allocation, because we would allocate multiple local authorities, because there were different cost models for pricing points for the services, we then had an allocation team that worked out, okay, the most cost-effective way of allocating this work based on supplier performance is this. So we would make sure we were driving best value out of that allocation process, so that we could ultimately get more migrations done for the contract values. We knew that if you look at the 5 services we talked about discovery. So going in and understanding what data sources and what data you need to complete the register, scanning and digitization, you know, writing business rules, and then spatial create and amend. There's an expectation that they're all pretty standard things available from the market. What was absolutely key was that local land charges and planning domain knowledge, because that is where there's so much learning, and you know that the leanness of delivery was really important on building that domain knowledge. So we invested really heavily in this. At mobilization, you know, we suppliers had to create their platforms and their processes, and we got governments up and running. But we went into a really detailed knowledge transfer, you know, in excess of 80 hours knowledge transfer that we shared with the migration service delivery partners across 6 work streams, to really get them up to speed with, these are what the services are. These are some of the examples we've had before. This is what we decided to do and why, so that they could be informed and, you know, develop that expertise and good practice that we brought them on board to deliver. And then we moved to, after mobilization, then we moved to the implementation phase, where we looked for them to demonstrate that they'd been able to apply that knowledge that they'd shared appropriately and they've now got a delivery capability. And we allocated them some live local authorities to migrate, and we put in place buddies, so land registry subject matter experts for each of the services to work them and help them deliver. As it was an implementation phase, we decided that we would capture KPIs and SLAs, but the contractual implications wouldn't become live in effect until they'd exited that implementation phase, because it was all about understanding what was working and what wasn't, and then addressing that while we were in that implementation phase. We used the contractually defined governance throughout to make sure that was working in an optimal way. And we also found, as we were going through that the initial payment structures associated with the implementation phase needed to be amended to help the supply chain with their time to cash. Okay, let's hope my internet connection isn't too unstable. So when things don't go as planned, I will be honest, we have had instances where things haven't gone as planned. And I think that the Mike Tyson quote is, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we went through, and we did scenario planning around this to try and make sure that the approaches we'd taken, the way we designed all aspects of the contracts and the governance and the critical success factors, etc., were based on, there's going to be times where certain things don't happen. But in that previous slide, it referenced that the mobilization was scheduled to take 3 months, and it took 5, and the implementation phase was planned to take 6 months, and it ended up taking 12. So some of the reasons for that, and what this diagram looks to show is the sort of the relationship between the services and the different actors involved in delivery. So, you know, you allocate local authorities based on the discussions that you've had with them, and then when we get into, so we're going into migration delivery, this is what you need to do. They're not ready, or things have changed from when we had the initial discussion. So you know, there's lost opportunities, wasted effort. We need then to go and pull someone else from the portfolio. But these things all have a lead time and take a while to spin up. What if you have a plan and then the day supplier, so the incumbent local authority supplier, doesn't deliver what they say they're going to deliver to the time and quality at that point? So, you know, we've had instances where latent configuration issues or, you know, bespoke configurations hadn't been understood until we'd looked to deliver the service, like here's a data extract, or here's a script that we need to run, and you've got like 2 weeks to run the script. it's going to be way more complex than that because of this thing that we hadn't appreciated before. So in the early days, we found things like that that knocked some of the migrations off track. And then ultimately that, the migration service delivery partner doesn't deliver to time and quality in some instances. Again, we'd always envisaged that would be the case, and we'd looked to give them a portfolio of work so that if something happened in one or more migrations, that you'd then be able to sort of pull another one through to start that going while any issues look to get addressed. So we felt that we were pretty robust and resilient in looking to deal with some of the issues that cropped up. What good practice came out of that? Well, the mobilization structure and content provided, that was deemed as excellent, and an unprecedented investment by an authority was what those migration service delivery partners said to us. So that was really worth the effort. When we defined the supplier service level agreements, we were really clear on what our obligations were in relation to delivering those, which really helped the ways of working and build that collaborative approach. We reinforce the collaborative ways of working. So we put MS Teams chats in so that the right people could have the right conversations. And we implemented communities of practice, because one of the benefits of the way we structured those migration service delivery contracts was they weren't competing with each other. So, it was based on their own performance, how much work they got. So that enabled us to sort of then have these communities of practice where spatial create guys could come together and they could talk about, this is what we've done in this instance, and this is how we do it, and here's how we've configured our tool, so that we could share that good practice to optimize delivery. We made sure we adopted retro so that we were really focused on continuous improvement and that people all had a voice in what was happening and how things went. We revised the payment milestones so that we could show that we were, we recognized some of the constraints that they had and what we might be able to do to fix it. And using the governance from the start was really important. And as you can see, we also learned a lot from what didn't quite go so well. I think our delivery expectations from the cost model for year one were too ambitious. And the suppliers, again, told us they would be able to do stuff that we didn't necessarily trust ourselves, but we thought, if that's what they think they can do, great, let's go with that. So that was a mistake. I think that was definitely a mistake, and something that then caused subsequent problems. We've absolutely refined that LA readiness and the frequency of touch points with them, because looking to start and then finding they weren't ready again was just caused wasted effort and delay in the program. We developed a whole series of processes at the start of going out for the procurement, and they were then held, because one of the things we had fed back to us very earlier on was government can be too prescriptive and stifle innovation, and we were really, we felt minded to just define the outcomes and define the quality. How it was achieved was up to them. Ultimately, when they came on board, they say, you're doing this, you know how to do it best. We're going to copy what you do and then refine it as we go forward. So there was a whole series of bringing those processes out and then revising them in line with what the evolved practice was from Land Registry. So definitely keep those all in line, and expect supply chain coming on board to want to utilize the good knowledge and experience that you have. As you saw, we had up to five services involved in delivering a data transformation. Our implementation phase said that you can't start delivering any other services until you've finished delivering your first four local authorities. Again, that caused problems with resource being idle, so we had to amend that approach. So it was about demonstrating service competence and capability before then exiting that implementation phase. I talked about them being perhaps over-delivering, and then, as you can see, we also learned a lot from what didn't quite go so well. I think our delivery expectations from the over ambitious about what they felt they could achieve, and that was, and we should have tested that harder, and that would have driven out some of their understanding. That would have helped us at the start, and also the exit phase. We focused on what was achieved rather than also including how it was achieved, and again that gave us issues at sign off where we weren't necessarily comfortable with all of it in one instance. They'd met the what, but the how was something that was of concern. So we would do that differently next time. Good practice from working with the incumbents with the days work stream. It really helped us join up and work together to make sure the local authority were hearing one message. It also brought operational and strategic governance in to work with them, which helped maintain momentum, bring focus to topics, and also land charges was local land charges was one element of many services that the incumbents were working on, and having that sort of strategic link in was something that was really, really helpful as it became apparent to the incumbents that actually this is really quite strategically important and we need to do a good job here. So having that governance in place really worked. It helped us with prioritizing work because the incumbent providers have ongoing projects that sit outside of that local land charges domain. So it helped us with prioritization. Publishing our specifications was really helpful because it gave people an opportunity to sort of self-serve rather than having to come back and ask questions all the time. We planned to make our technical resource available to work with the supplier development, which worked really well and helped to build some good relationships. And Land Registry has also then looked to build our own in-house expertise based on these incumbent systems, because Land Registry will have a need going forward, even when the program's completed, to have that intelligent customer side of the way these incumbent systems work and how they integrate to ours. What did we learn? That a lot of the incumbent suppliers had a transactional business model, and dealing with a government program was something that was a real challenge to them. So we've looked to work with them to help bring about some of the change that was needed. What this did mean is that then they weren't always able to move at the pace that we wanted. As far as managing your stakeholders, really set expectations about what you might be able to achieve for the single tender award, because often there's not an awful lot of teeth in it for you as the customer of that contract, because they're not competing for it, so it's just based on what they're prepared to give you. I think ultimately what's been good from our point of view is that the incumbent suppliers have recognized what this program is looking to do, and they can see there's benefit for them in being part of achieving it. So yeah, we've got something that enables us to work together. Absolutely make sure you decouple your dependencies and have visibility of them, because incumbent dependencies or local authority dependencies that we didn't know about have absolutely killed delivery in some instances. And make sure you use SLAs and KPIs effectively. In the single tender awards, it's very, very limited what we have in that space. And I think we missed an opportunity with the change control where we could have brought in would have changed some of the commercial model around it, but on reflection, it would have delivered value to the program. And from our point of view, also look to use wider UK government influence, particularly with the incumbent providers, on helping make things happen. Key takeaways: absolutely make sure you've got a capable team in place for the contract life cycle. We did that. It was absolutely invaluable that the people who would then go on and manage the ongoing supplier relationship were part of designing the requirements, being part of the procurement approach, being part of the procurement, rather than it's all done now, here we are, we hand this over to you. I think for particularly for complex projects like this, we really feel that was great practice. Domain knowledge is just so important from the supplier and from you as the customer. Know the contract, but build the relationship. Sort of listed why in there. Absolutely, you will need to know the contract, but it's hopefully it's not something you're getting out and pointing to all the time in the conversations that you're having. And so build those relationships where you feel you're in that sort of win-win situation, or at least people have got your back if things get a bit difficult. But be really clear on what is good performance and what you're going to do if good performance isn't being seen. I've talked about the issue with single tender award contracts. I've talked about dependencies. I think the final thing is contracts can be changed to meet business need. We felt we absolutely kicked the tires so many times on what we put together and why it was important, but assumptions don't always come through, and things change, and things are some developments are outside of your control and perhaps couldn't have been envisaged. So you have to adapt to that when they land. So contract change is sometimes the right way to take that forward. I think that's all. Is there any?
That's fantastic, Gary. Thank you very much indeed.